Hey, what's up guys? It's the People's Realtor, Chaz Fernandez, and today we're going to be talking about how to find and successfully get an apartment in Hudson County, New Jersey. And stay tuned until the end where I show you one little tip that's going to cost you absolutely nothing that may be the difference between you getting an apartment and not getting an apartment. So the first thing when finding an apartment in Hudson County is you have to determine your price and your budget. Okay, most landlords in Hudson County are going to require at least 2.5 times the monthly income for you to qualify for an apartment. For example, let's say you're a single person living by yourself. You find an apartment that's $1,800 a month. 1,800 times 2.5 is going to equal about $4,500. So in other words, that landlord is going to want you to be making $4,500 a month gross, so pre-taxed. Okay. Now, if you were, let's say it was a couple moving into that same apartment, the household income would have to be $4,500 a month. Okay. So, each partner would only have to make about $2,250 a month before taxes, okay, to qualify for an apartment like that. Now, there are times where landlords are okay if you don't make 2.5 times the income, right? Let's say, for example, instead of making $4,500 a month, let's say you make about $4,000 a month, which is like $1,000 a week before taxes, okay? Now, other factors, okay, such as, do you have any pets? Okay, no, you don't have any pets. Okay, good. Do you have any evictions? No criminal background history, okay? Those are all good things. If you have a good credit score, let's say your credit's over 680, 670, maybe even over 700, those are things where it's like, okay, maybe he doesn't make the full 2.5 times the monthly income requirement, but the other factors are good. In addition, if you don't qualify for the 2.5 times income requirement, a lot of times, they'll be okay if you don't make the 2.5 times requirement, but because let's say you have a large savings, right? Let's say your savings account is, maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. They'll be like, okay, well, this person has a large savings, so that's another thing that they'll take into consideration. It'll make them feel more comfortable. So when renting an apartment in Hudson County, you should also expect to pay 3 to 3.5 months up front in rent. What I mean by that is at lease signing, you should expect to pay 1 month's rent, right? The first month, of course, right? 1 month security, and then the 1 month broker fee, okay? Now, for practically all the apartments in Hudson County, okay, and I'm talking about all the ones that are listed by a real estate agent, which is the majority, the tenant is going to have to pay 1 month broker fee to a listing agent, right? So you have to pay 1 month broker fee, 1 month rent, 1 month security, and sometimes some landlords will actually want 1.5 month security, okay? So it may be 3.5 months, okay? Now, that 1 month broker fee, if a renter is going to go straight to a listing agent for a property, okay, you're going to have to pay that 1 month broker fee. So what I tell people is, you're better off working with someone like me that's going to help you find an apartment, because you don't have to pay the broker fee twice. You would still only pay 1 month broker fee. The only difference is that broker fee of 1 month will now get split between the listing agent and myself. So I tell people, you don't lose anything by working with me, because now you have someone on your side. Someone's going to fight for you to get the apartment and get all your documents, going to show you the apartment. I have connections with landlords across Hudson County, so there are times where I even have apartments that aren't even on the market, okay? And essentially, it's not going to cost you any extra, because if you have to pay 1 month broker fee anyway, if you went unrepresented by yourself to a listing agent, you might as well have a tenant agent on your side, okay? And like I said, the only difference is now you're still going to pay 1 month, except now it's going to be split between me and the listing agent. So after you find an apartment and you decide that, hey, I want to apply for it, okay, most of the time you're going to have to do some type of application, right? Usually in Hudson County, the most popular application system they use is called the NTN report, the National Tenant Network, okay? And depending on the agent and depending on what criteria they want in the report, it's going to cost anywhere between $50 to $60, okay? And that's $50 to $60 per applicant. So if it's 2 people, you have to pay it twice. If you're doing 2 people and a co-signer, the co-signer will also have to pay as well, okay? So the one good thing though about this report is that it can be reused, right? So if you apply for an apartment, you do the National Tenant Network application that the agent's going to require you to do, and let's say you don't get it, the good thing is that you can reuse that report for another apartment. So ideally, you only have to pay for it once, which is a good thing, and it's good because, like I said, the National Tenant Network application is the most used application, in Hudson County for screening tenants. Now, some other documents you can expect to have to give an agent, whether it's a tenant agent applying for you or you're going directly to a listing agent, is they're going to ask for a form of identification, a copy, whether it's a driver's license, passport, the New Jersey state identification card. Okay, you're gonna need one of those. And a lot of times they're gonna ask for your last 2 to 3 pay stubs. Okay, because they want to verify that you are making an income that's gonna hit the requirement for 2.5 months, sometimes even 3 months, but 2.5 is usually the standard. Now for that secret tip that I promised earlier on in the video. This is something that I like to offer, I like to tell some clients to do, okay, when applying for an apartment in Hudson County is writing a letter. When you send out that application to an agent, you send out your driver's license, you send out the last 3 pay stubs. Also, I like to include a letter sometimes. So let's say I'm applying for an apartment, I may write, dear landlord, my name is Chaz Fernandez. I work in New York City as in a consulting firm, or I'm a bartender at Hoboken, and I really liked your apartment because of the hardwood floors. I liked how it was close to the PAT station. I liked the neighborhood. I liked how there was dog park around the corner. Talk about what you like about it. Talk about who you are a little bit. Say, I grew up in Union City my whole life, or maybe you say, I'm moving here from Florida and I'm looking to, find my next home, and I think your apartment is the perfect place to make my next home. Talk about yourself a little bit. Talk about, who you are. This is a good way to show the landlord that you're not just an applicant. You're a person. Show that human side. Appeal to the human side of that landlord. Landlords, they want someone that they know that they like, right? They want someone that they know is going to pay rent on time. That's not going to be, pain in the butt per se. They want someone that they know is not going to trash the apartment, and so by sending out this letter, you're appealing to the human side of the landlord. And I think that, this is something that I'd recommend the client to do, especially if perhaps, maybe the income requirement, they're not really meeting it, right? Maybe their credit score isn't as high, okay? So we have to rely on other factors. So one of the best things you can do, and this costs you nothing, to go on a Microsoft Word or a Google Doc or anything, and just type out letter. And also send that to the agent as well, so the agent can present that letter to the landlord, okay? That's my little secret tip that I like to advise some people to do. So there you have it. That's how you find an apartment in Hudson County, New Jersey. That's how you get an apartment, I should say. If you are looking to get an apartment in Hudson County, okay, please, my phone number is on the screen. I've already mentioned how it's going to cost you nothing extra to work with me, right? So you might as well have someone on your side, someone who's familiar with the area, someone who can give you tips, and I can find places that are close to public transportation. I can tell you what areas to avoid. So please, my phone number's on the screen. Please feel free to give me a call or text, and I look forward to working with you guys. See you guys in the next video.